Good morning, everyone. Tommy Grisafi coming to you here live from Nashville. We got a whole new show built for you. We got a real special guest, and I don't want to waste any time, but let's just waste a little time introducing him. Today, we have Mr. Jim Wiesemeyer. If you don't remember how to spell it, he's got a little rhyme, but a lot of E's and S's and E's and M's. He's got a little nursery rhyme how we could spell that and get you signed up. He's got a newsletter, and it is amazing. Well, Jim's coming to us live from the great city, or maybe not so great city. Jim Wiesemeyer, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great considering we're in a 24/7 news cycle ever since Trump 2.0.
Trump 2.0.2. I tell you what, I got to tell you something. I work on that side of this is a podcast studio I have here in Nashville. And I have a live cattle feeder cattle position on, maybe not working out so well. I don't know what happened in the market, but from when I walked to this side of the room to this side of the room, the market's had a big move. But I am so happy to be here with you. I've watched you my whole life. It's my understanding, if you can go back a little bit, the folks in this room who originated from Sparks, the original people here from Nesvick, were all descendants of Sparks. Explain to the youngsters out there, what the hell was Sparks?
Oh my goodness. Willard Sparks was the most intelligent person I've ever known in the business of agriculture. He was one of my mentors. In fact, I worked for him under Sparks Companies. And then when they sold the firm after he passed away, it became Inform Economics, and then that was sold. But Willard was a trader, Trader, a trader first, but an analyst as well. And he knew the value of information, and he supported his people. He was a people person.
That's amazing. I hear nothing but legendary stories from about Willard and everything that's been said about him. There's a gentleman I work with. He got his start, and I don't think he minds me telling, but his father sold Willard his jets. Explain that story.
Oh, one of his passions was buying new jets. Now he had the ability to do it. I buy train sets, model train sets, but he bought actual planes. Okay. But Willard, my one line story on Willard Sparks is before China became a big buyer of US soybeans, he went over to China and did his research. He came back and he told the Sparks analysts to double their estimate of Chinese imports of US soybeans. He had a number of clients, one of them, at least, if not two, canceled, saying that's unrealistic. He was actually too low, as it turned out to be. He had the ability to see the forest from the trees.
Well, hopefully that's what you can help us do today. I got we got a great crew helping us behind the scenes at the secret crew. You sent us a bunch of slides. We're probably going to go long today, which is fine, because as long as you keep talking, I can keep clicking. I do want to put up a picture of a building, and then we'll lead in with this one.
Sure.
This is the building in the USDA. A lot of energy out there in the interweb when it comes to the USDA. Should I pull up the first slide, my friend?
Yes.
All right, let me see. First slide. I think it's gonna. Let me see how it loads here. Let me see if this loads up like that. We're gonna go full screen on that slide. Go ahead and talk about this one.
Well, over the past 2 decades, when USDA's August crop production, which this one did, projected a record national corn yield, you can see in most cases, except 2014, it went lower in the eventual final estimate. Now, is that going to be the case? That remains to be seen, because 2025 is showing very similar aspects to 2014 when it actually went higher. So don't necessarily think that yield is going to go down. We may not even have the second digit right, because you can see USDA yesterday put the corn yield at what, 188.8 bushels per acre. Now versus the acreage, look at, there it is. I on the back of the sheet envelope, the additional 2 million acres of corn is the equivalent of adding 361 million bushels, that's like adding Michigan's corn crop, because Michigan is forecast at 358. It just means, look at the carryover. That's a burdensome carryover, and that's why prices went down. USDA cut now that's their price forecast to $3.90. That's farm gate price. That's a world of hurt right there. That means that's the average. That means you're going to go lower and some higher.
Yeah, real quick. A lot of clients I work with, I want to quote up the markets for people here. Let's quote them
Sure.
up as we get into today. Corn started the day up, but it is down now, folks. East corn, 394 and a quarter, down 1. Soybean still up 3.5. They were up as much as 12. Soybean oil lower. Meal higher. Wheat down a penny. Casey wheat down 6. Dow Jones up 340. Bitcoin was up 2,000. Gold's up $10. Crude oil down $1. We got a lot of deflationary things hitting here. Feeder cattle down $1. They were up $3.54 a little bit ago. A lot of things going on there. With that, everyone wants to talk about this, Jim. Wall Street. Wall Street's all the rage, brother. It's just that easy, right?
Yeah, well, we've got the Dow up almost 350 again, and my 401k is now 501k, so I like that.
Well, I do too. I do like that. Real quick, you put out a newsletter not just once a day, sometimes multiple times a day, and you do encourage and want people to sign up for that or with that. Is that correct?
That's absolutely. It's called updates. It's updates on policy, news, and markets. Primarily perspective on the policy. Some conjecture, but with reasoned analysis on that. And that's why I like we chose perspectives as far as the podcast title, because anybody can cut and paste information, as you well know, Tommy, but it's what perspective you put on the news. And I may have learned something in my 5 decades of covering the business of agriculture in Washington, D.C. So that's what we do in updates. And you can, there's my email. You just tell me you want to get on the list. And from a farmer's perspective, I'll give it to you at the best price, $0.
Well, farmers like that, and they don't like paying taxes either. I tell you, there's something for having gray hair, but you took it a step further. There's something for having no hair. That means you've been around the block for a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
I always say all great men are dead, and I'm not well myself. Okay.
What about the other saying you have about interviewing someone who died?
Interviewed what?
You said you have a quote where
I have a quote like you don't have to die to write about death, but it probably helps.
All right, we'll be here all week. I wish I had a bell loaded up, but we talk about that. All right, let's get back to these graphs and shows. You got a lot of stuff to talk about here. Ag Bull Podcast, Tom Grisafi. I'm with Nesvick Trading Group. Call myself Ag Bull Trading. It's a DBA of Nesvick. We got a little disclaimer down there because we might talk a little bit about futures and options, but as you know, the risk of loss trading commodity futures contracts can be substantial. Therefore, you should carefully consider whether such trading suits you, as it is not for everyone. I'm reading the ticker. You know what else can lose you a lot of money, my friend?
What's that?
Having no corn sold into a record crop. I mean, I got to read a disclaimer because I'm a futures and options broker. What about all these people giving cash sale advice who haven't given any? What do you think of that?
They're the biggest longs around. And I'm telling you, I used to be a market reporter to a degree in the 70s and the 80s, and you tend to learn a lot. And my father taught me a long time ago, you can't go bankrupt making money. So a farmer or an individual trader has to know when they're in a profit or loss position. And this market, any rally should be sold, in my personal judgment, because of that burdensome carryover. So the National Corn Growers Association, I think as we speak, is having a press event urging the Trump administration to focus more on trade agreements that focus on agriculture, increased farm exports. They want a year-round E15 that they think has the equivalent of utilizing about 450 more million bushels of corn. In other words, bottom line, we got to get rid of this stuff. And if a farmer doesn't have anything sold, they're the biggest long. And now, from a farm policy perspective, USDA lowered that price average price 30 cents. Paul Neefer, a good friend of mine, the farm CPA, he writes a daily column. He said that'll add $3.6 billion to corn program payments. They won't see it until October 2026. But every 10 cents down on the marketing average price is equivalent to $1.2 billion. So there is a necessary tempering of this downside. What I just told you is that we have a safety net, and that's the value of the farm programs, and that's the value of we finally got an increase in the reference prices in the Title I farm programs. So I like that you're a trader, Tommy, because I learned early on from my mentors, Willard Sparks, Merrill Oster at Pro Farmer, that you merge prices with policy. So I know when we're at the bottom of a trading range, you emphasize bullish news because it'll get people afraid if they're bearish. Opposite on when you're at the top of a market. I learned as a beat reporter, I looked after negative news because traders notice the tension. That's called fear. It's called fear. Traders fear, and that's what drives markets. Conrad Leslie, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
He used to do he taught me years ago, Jim, that's the way to do reporting, but also ask traders, what would it take to reverse their position? If they're long, what type of news or market signals would have to come out to have them reverse? That's called a mega change. And they don't come about every day, maybe once every 3 to 5 months. So I tend to look for those, Tommy.
I heard a story of Paul Tudor Jones. Have you ever met Paul Tudor Jones from Tudor Corp?
Well, I've heard him speak. Yeah.
Yeah, he pretty good, huh?
Yes. He makes more money than I do.
Yeah. He does some good things with it too. So hats off to him. He was telling a story like that. You could, as a trader, a great trader, which I'm not claiming to be, this is his story. But as a trader, you could call all your friends, tell them you're bullish crude oil, you're bullish crude oil, you're bullish crude oil, and then call them back at the end of the day and say, how'd you do? Crude oil went down $2, and go, oh, the second I got off the phone with you, I sold 500 because I changed my mind. Like, you could have an opinion and be able to change your mind. And unfortunately, when it comes to the farm economy or the farm gate, they only have one opinion. It's got to go up. Otherwise, we're in trouble. And I think we're starting to go to the lather where they may be in trouble, correct?
Yes, because we don't know what the lows are right now with this carryover. And in a typical market like this with building supplies, you can have exaggerated lows. Like they won't stay there that long, but that's what the buyers are looking at. I don't think they're going to be long bought anytime soon, importers. This is good for the cattle industry and the poultry industry, but this is a world of hurt that's going on in corn country right now. Under $4 futures is not good for a corn producer.
And in North Dakota, I have an office in Mayville, North Dakota. Nesvick and myself, we have an office there right in between Fargo and Grand Forks. Do you know what the corn basis is in parts of North and Central and Western North Dakota? Do you want to take a guess?
I have no idea.
60, 70, 80 cents under. That puts old crop corn hit $2.99 cash yesterday in North Dakota. New crop corn is definitely in the lower threes all across the state. You know what else happened in the state of North Dakota this spring, Jim? We had back-to-back tornadoes that knocked down over 100 million bushels of storage. So we have a farm economy in the Dakotas, just favoring them because that's where a lot of my friends and clients are, is that we have we've lost bins. We're fighting with China. We do not have a good book of business for OND when it comes to soybeans. And the USDA is talking about reference prices and stuff. That's not real cash prices. That's like, ballpark prices.
True.
So if you're down in Southern Illinois and you can bring corn or beans to St. Louis to the river, you may have a way greater price. Or if you're in Decatur or Cedar Rapids, where you got all those, they're gobbling up millions of bushels of corn. a day, a totally different ag environment than people on what some folks would call the fringe acres. But the problem, Jim, and I think you'd agree because you've been in this business a long time, the fringe acres aren't so fringe anymore. Those
No, they're
boys can
not. Look
produce
at the
some bushels.
Dakotas. Look at North and South Dakota for corn. They're
Hmm.
big time. And I think
Hmm.
if you were in the middle of a cornfield in North Dakota, you'd swear you were in Iowa or Illinois,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, and they're getting better with farm practices. They're getting better with drain tile. The Red River Valley's become extremely
Absolutely.
wet. If I'm sure you, when you go on the speaking circuit, you bump into Snodgrass and all those boys, and he talks about how the GDUs and growing degree days have went up, how the moistures went up. The more you introduce corn to ground that's never had corn, magically that area starts
Yeah.
to produce more moisture. But hey, I'm not a weatherman, nor do I play one on TV. Let's get back to these slides. All right.
Sure. Okay.
What do we have here? August 2025 corn yield. You want to talk about this?
Well, this is a storage. You mentioned the storage. What is our storage capacity? Last week, I knew this crop was going to be big. Now, I didn't think it was going
You
to be
should have
this
called
big,
me. You should have called me.
but you could just sense it. Well, the weather was just relatively, there's more hills than valleys, as we say. And of course, the general farm media likes to kill a crop 10 times over. And I knew that was a problem too. But look at the storage capacity. Whenever you have a huge crop like this, and USDA does a survey, I think in December grain stocks report. So this is the last update to show you the storage capacity on farm and off farm. Now, why is that a market factor? Because you're going to have more than a few bushels, Tommy, as you well know, stored on the ground. Now, we've improved our capability that way, but typically you have wider bases in a number of states when you have a capacity problem on storage, and I think that's what we'll be seeing in some areas.
Yeah, and you sent me doozies of charts, so I'll just let you talk through them. What do we have here, my friend?
Well, nationwide, we have about a little over 2 billion bushels of surplus storage, and at least on paper. So that's the bottom line on storage. The other one that you're seeing is, I like to point out, we have a new ATM machine for the Trump administration, and it's called these tariffs revenue. We had $28 billion come in just the month of July. It's about $147 billion so far this fiscal year. Well, what's that mean to agriculture? Well, USDA can utilize 35%. It lags a year, but 35% of that funding for food aid purchases or whatever. So eventually, I think, Tommy, they're going to tap some of this tariff revenue if the ag community prices continue to go down. They're not going to do it right away, but we have that revenue stream there that Trump is not going to be afraid to use, as we well know.
The let me ask you a question, and I don't know the answer, but what percentage of farmers do you think vote Democrat versus Republican?
60% or so vote Republican, and I'm fairly confident on that. And it depends on the state and the region within a state. Like example, when I go in Mississippi and give speeches, I better not say anything negative on Trump because they have cannons in their front yard and they use them, I guess. So you have to know where you're at.
Yeah.
But I'd say on average 60%. And it's not just agriculture policies, it's social policies and things like that, where over the years farmers are just more conservative, and that typically leans on the Republican Party.
Excellent. Let's deep dive into DC. I'm going to have a whole nother graphics package for next time we do this, but my team put together, well, you sent the slides. You did your homework. My team did their homework. I'm just supposed to sit here, look pretty, and ask you questions. But it is so much fun to work with a professional like you.
Oh, thank you.
And I just got to, who I got to thank? I wasn't real active in media. I'd never done speeches, but a guy named Greg Vincent. You remember Greg Vincent?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Greg Vincent let me speak at a Pioneer meeting, And he said, you were pretty good. And then he gave my name to the U.S. Farm Report people, and they let me speak and do a show. It was taped in South Bend. And I was very not comfortable speaking. And I'll just flat out say I wasn't very good at it, but you can get better. And so now I'm in Nashville working here. I'm going to host Cow Guy Close, an hour live national show the last week of August. I'm going to be at RFD TV. I'm sure you know the good folks there,
Yes.
hosting a show. And I get to work with my friend Tony St. James. As you know, I do shows with Don Wick. And I have learned so much from you guys. And I just got to thank the people who helped give me that little nudge to get in media. Now, there's one thing I'll tell you about Don Wick. I'm going to embarrass him, and we'll know if he watches this. But when I started doing this, I said, Don, video is the future. He goes, well, I'm a radio guy. And I said, listen, I'm all for radio, but Ford wants to take out the AM radio out of the cart. Like, you got to get with the 80s here and move to the 2000s and go video. You can be a radio guy and still kick butt doing video. Do you agree?
I totally agree. I remember in the early days of Pro Farmer, we're talking late 70s, early 80s, before the internet. Okay.
Oh my
We
God.
did a
Before the
lot
flip
of
phone?
seminar, almost on a weekly basis. We were out in farm country giving seminars, and you became a better speaker, and you knew what farmers wanted to hear. They wanted to hear what you thought on things, not biased, as fair-minded as you can be. And you know, the more you do something, usually the better you get. And so again, I'll come back to the perspectives in our title, Tommy. Trump this time, my perspective versus his first term, he's far more experienced. He picked a more loyal cabinet. Yes, he's emotional. Trump is unlike any president I've covered since Nixon. I go back as far as that, because he's a pure businessman, and he's not necessarily a politician. And he wants to make decisions a lot quicker than bureaucrats do. And he listens to people, but not nearly as many. He won't have 3 meetings on one subject. That's not Trump. So that's Trump. And I'm frequently asked, Jim, who are the stars of his cabinet? And the first one is Scott Bessent. He's Treasury. Yeah, he's Treasury Secretary. And Business Week, look at the Bloomberg Business Week, had a coin saying, "In Bessent we trust." And look at his the bullet points I have in my speech. You know, he's the one who eventually helped convince Trump to pull back from his April 2nd Liberation Day, percentages. Remember that? Where the market just cratered in the financial markets. Then they came with that 10% tariff, and it stabilized things. But he's a farmer analyst at Soros, etc. He knows the markets, Tommy. And I've always seen in my history of working with government officials, if you've had a job in a private industry, you bring risk management to that. You know, decisions you make, there's a winner and a loser on policy. He understands that. So hopefully he helps convince Trump that there'll be more winners in policy than losers. So I applaud Scott Bessent, because he brings a financial expertise to a very important job called the Treasury Department. And he's gotten better in his communication skills. His first month on the job, I wasn't that impressed, but he is a whippersnapper when it comes to picking the right phrase to give again the perspective on what's happening. And he's a diplomat in doing it. The second one I choose for the star of the cabinet is Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. I mean, can you imagine dealing with President Trump, emotional President Trump, on foreign policy matters? Well, he has. And he was voted on in the Senate, his nominee, 99 votes. You tell me the last time we've had 99 people vote in Congress on anything. They wouldn't even do that for their grandparents. Okay. So he's going to be a potential either presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate after Trump. Right man, right position. And the third one, and I didn't think I'd ever say this in my multi-decade in Washington, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. You talk about a farmer friendly, ag friendly, not just farmers, energy friendly, market friendly. Uh, because I've never said that on any EPA administrator. I've always been rather negative on them. Why is he different? He listens to his boss, Trump. Trump is the most pro-agriculture farmers, he always calls them his farmers, than I've ever seen in my history here, Tommy. But he knows who his boss is. Now, he's from New York, so he wasn't an ethanol proponent when he was a congressman, but he is now. So I give him high marks. He's come out just the yesterday with diesel fuel, DEF, we call it, just very practical. So to me, that's a good sign. He's very deregulation. And one of the hallmarks of President Trump's first term was deregulation. That means basically regulations are taxes. So if you have fewer regulations or deal with existing ones, that's like a tax cut. And so that's the one thing I really like about not only the current EPA, but how Trump views regulations. You need some of them, but a lot of them you don't because they're unfunded mandates. Ask a farmer.
Mm-hmm. And you see that, Jim, politically on red states versus blue states. I mean, if you go up to the state of Minnesota, they have, if they don't have, they're sure trying to have a heck of a lot more regulation than other states, correct?
Yes, I'm going to go next week to a Minnesota Ag Leadership meeting, but now this is Aggies there. If you could get rid of Minneapolis, St. Paul, that'd be a Republican state, but you don't. And Minnesota tilts definitely on the regulatory side, especially from a state basis. And that's another thing you brought up. You just can't look at federal policy when people who want to get into your operations are not having success in Washington, D.C. Where do they go? They go to the state legislatures, and we've seen that in a number of states. Now, I'm an equal opportunity finger pointer, both Republicans and Democrats over the years. I hopefully call them like I see them.
Mm-hmm. I see that quote oftentimes that like a Democrat of the 60s now would be considered a Republican. Do you dare touch on that?
I'm sorry?
A Democrat in the 60s would now be considered a conservative.
Probably so. Yeah. I mean, Bill Clinton couldn't get approved anymore. Reagan probably couldn't get approved anymore on the Republican side. The reason? We have very few competitive races in the House. And now with this redistricting, they've gerrymandered the states where a Republican is not worried about, in many cases, a Democratic opponent. They're worried about being primaried by a more conservative person in their state, the opposite from a Democrat perspective. They're running against a person who's even further liberal, if not tilting toward socialism, what we're seeing in the state of New York right now.
What's that mean? Come on now, Jim. We're live. You can't start. You mean to say the state of New York is going to have a debacle like you've never seen?
The city?
Yeah, the city.
It could. It could.
Yeah. You know, I have some clients who are farmers in New York, and they love New York, and they're great American farmers, and they are disgusted with what's happening in that big city. And I like New York. I'm going to go to New York in a few months, and I got a list of restaurants I want to go to. And last fall, I got a chance to. It made me very emotional. I went to the New York Stock Exchange, and then I walked out, and I went to the. I walked about by the fire station, ladder 11, and then I went to the World Trade Center and started crying. Grown-ass man crying in New York because we were attacked, Jim. So that city's got a lot of rich history.
No doubt
about it. America, I think of New York.
But some Democrats are still what I would call more moderate. Look at the Kentucky governor, Brescher. Watch him for a potential Democratic run for president the next time. He has the pulse of the state of Kentucky. Now, you would think, how can a Democrat win in Kentucky? Well, he has, because
Yep.
he listens to the voters, and he's more of a moderate, about as moderate as you can get on the Democratic side right now. Another one that I want to tell you, a real quick story.
Jim, we got time.
Okay.
We got time. We don't have to cut for
Okay.
commercial
I
break.
like perspective again, because in the 1980s, I was walking the halls of USDA, in this case, the Economic Research Service, and they have country specialists. So I went in and I saw a guy who was a Mideast analyst, and I saw flags on his bulletin board. He had a number of flags, and I said, what are those flags for? He goes, well, that's where Iraq has been purchasing U.S. wheat.
Oh, come on.
And I said, well, why is Iraq buying all that wheat? And he looked at me and he said, just a hunch, but I think they're getting ready for an Iraq-Iran war. 10 days later, we had an item on the front page of Pro Farmer. Why is Iraq buying all that wheat? 10 days later, Iran and Iraq had a war against each other. That's just using your noodle, Tommy. He put two and two together. Follow up. I'm trying to be general here. A CIA person came to my office in Washington, D.C., had the item and said, could you please tell us what your information was on this item? I said, no.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? True story. True story. So I'm just saying, people can reason things. You don't need a PhD. And that's why I love the ag sector. They're more common sense. And so and that's why the attitudes, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the common sense in the Midwest and the southern states are just what the East and West Coast need more of.
Well, I'll just tell you from my personal experience. I grew up in Griffith, Indiana, moved to Valparaiso, moved to Chicago, went to the Board of Trade on a high school field trip. But I'm living a few weeks, a month in Nashville. Now, Nashville's a big city, but after the close today, I'm going to head down to Memphis to Nesvick corporate office down there, and that Southern hospitality. I do like when I go to a restaurant in Memphis and ask for the restroom, the girls or the waitress or the host always say, where are you from? Because you're not from here with that accent. I say, I have an accent. Have you heard yourself speak? But the Southern hospitality. And the ladies act like ladies and the gentlemen act like gentlemen. And sometimes a gal steps up to go to the bathroom and guys actually stand up, or, they do things that you're like, what's wrong? Did she drop something? What are you doing? Speaking of ladies, I got one for you. This young lady, what do you know about this?
Brooke Rollins. She is the most dynamic USDA secretary I've covered. She's very intelligent. My number one point about Brooke Rollins is that she's passionate, which I love. I love passionate people because I'm passionate. Two is that she was in the final running to be White House Chief of Staff. Susie Wiley got it. That tells you what Trump thinks about her. She was in Trump's first administration in the domestic policy area. It's a lot like Trump.
Go back to that first one, because I don't know this stuff as well as you. She was in the first administration.
She was domestic policy staff, and then when she left after the first Trump administration, she helped lead a GOP-led policy group. And Trump knew that, so he knew who to tap. I mean, she's almost like Trump with skirts on, is how I'd write it. Very conservative, but she's a good spokeswoman for agriculture, for Texas A&M schooling. So you go to Texas A&M, you're well schooled, let me tell you, because I know two of the smartest economist in agriculture at a land grant college. I wouldn't tell them personally. Dr. Joe Outlaw and Bart Fisher, just two of the best economists I know. But she comes from Texas, and she's got the ear of President Trump. Initially, she was the one who went in before a hearing in Congress. She went to Trump at the resolution desk, as she calls it, and told Trump, we're getting hit in farm country on these raids of illegal immigrants, and it's impacting the farm labor. One of the top three issues in agriculture is farm labor: how to get them, how to keep them. And Trump, the very next day, came out with a more moderate approach that wanted basically to protect as much as possible the workers on farms. Well, some of his more conservative people, Miller in his Stephen Miller, didn't like that. So I think Rollins was caught in the middle on that one. So she's kind of flip-flopped in some areas on the farm labor issue. But overall, she gets a very high rating on the report card, at least from most people in Washington.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, folks, if you're out there, I'm with Jim Wiesemeyer. This is a new show here on Ag Bull Podcast. My name is Tommy Grisafi. Maybe you know me, maybe you don't. If you're joining for the first time, thank you. If you aren't joining for the first time, well, whatever. I do need you to like and subscribe, but I want you to like and subscribe to this man's newsletter. Tell us again about your newsletter. I'm going to show folks how to sign up for this.
Yeah, Wiesemeyer@gmail.com. That's Wiesemeyer. Every other letter is an E except at the beginning. That's how I learned it as a kid.
I was just telling my friend Clayton Nesvick, my partner here at Nesvick. He goes, "How do you spell Wiesemeyer?" I go, "Well, sit down. It's nursery rhyme time. Wiesemeyer. Wiesemeyer. Let's
don't
go.
make it hard. And if you're pronouncing it, as I tell people, just say it fast. Just say it fast.
Tell you a story. Shout out to my pops. When I was growing up, we had to learn all the presidents, And as you drive from Griffith, Indiana to Gary, Indiana to Hobart, Indiana, Gary had every single president's name. So my dad would be like, "We're going to go through the bad part of Gary," because, well, to be honest with you, I never knew what the good part of Gary was. But and I learned my presidents by my pops driving me through Gary, going, "Okay, here we go. What's the next street?" And at least I remembered him for a few weeks. But
well, as long as on this program, Tommy, I don't have to sing, because in the 5th grade, our music teacher was Harold Wentz. I'll never forget this because it was traumatic to me. We had to say the do, re, mi up and down. And when I was done, he looked at me, he goes, "Oh my goodness, you missed every one." And, and he saw that I was just forlorn. And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't sung since."
Oh, that's awesome. Jim Wiesemeyer. Wiesemeyer@gmail for the Wiesemeyer. How would you describe your newsletter? If I bumped into you on the street and you're like, "Oh, I have a newsletter," how do you describe the Wiesemeyer newsletter?
It's a digital ag newspaper, basically, and trying to select the most important topics of the day, connecting dots. And that's why I talk financial markets, because Tommy, the equity markets, the bond market, the only boss Washington, D.C. has, Tommy, is the bond market.
I know a little about that.
If they feel we have a $37 trillion debt, I'm sorry, we can't grow our way out of that. If the bond market ever realized that we lost control, your real interest rates are going to go faster, increase faster than most people realize. So I learned early on to watch the bond market, because that's a forecaster of interest rates, which I know is very important to the agribusiness sector, both at the producer end and at the infrastructure end, the Cargills of the world, the seed company peoples of the world. Then I get into policy, of course, not just farm policy, but energy policy. I mean, Trump's number one focus from a market perspective is tax cuts, and he's already got that. 2 is energy. As much energy production as he can get, and that delves you into corn-based ethanol. That gets you into sustainable aviation fuel, biodiesel, renewable diesel. All that's wrapped in in policy? And then, of course, from a market perspective, how does this tie in? Is something factored into the market already, or is it a surprise on it? So that's what I dig into when I do the morning report. I'm a workaholic, so I get up there. I don't need much sleep. I'm going to flame out one of these days. But I get up like about 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's pure joy where I go in. I get about 1,300 emails a day. Not all
Come
of them.
on.
I do.
1,300.
1,300 emails a day. Not all of them are important, but I got to go through all of them because number one, they could be a speaking request, so I want those. And two, some of them are pretty good information because I built up contacts both from Congress, the administrations, and then the industry, grain and livestock industry over the years. So, and I try to wrap those into a digital ag report about, let me see, about between 8 and 8:30 Central Time.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to wrap it together. Yeah, it's a lot of information, but I headline, I put boldface, I put graphics when I think that it's needed, etc. So my grapevine is my sources, both farmers. That's why I love giving speeches. I learn. I still learn at my age because I still have an ear that will listen. The day I don't listen is the day I don't grow.
The good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to use them in that order. Unfortunately, I got to ask backwards. But
yeah, well, you can always tell a lawmaker when he's lying when he moves his mouth.
I like that one. I like that one.
That's an old lie.
No, I love it. I'm going to take a little break for station identification. I need people to subscribe to the Ag Bull YouTube channel. It's been a while since we started going live, but we're going to go live. We're going to do this once a week. We're trying to figure out the best day. Folks, if you're out there, you can comment. We'll get to the comments last. What day would you like to see this? We had maybe talked about Monday. I think, Jim, my schedule might work for Wednesday. Sometimes we might have to pre-record and then release them if I'm traveling or you're traveling. But we're going to be very consistent and get this show out once a week. If we do it on a Monday, we got all the news from the weekend, which there's never a shortage of news.
Never a shortage of news.
I'm digging this Wednesday thing because we got what happened over the weekend, what happened at the beginning of the week. Then I feel like things start to tail off real quick.
But I'll throw an asterisk in for you. Next week,
sir.
I'm going to be traveling back from Minneapolis on a Wednesday afternoon. So we may have to do Thursday.
That's fine. Thursday's going to work better for me.
Wednesday or Thursday. It depends on your schedule and my schedule. So I think what we just said, we're going to shoot for Wednesday. If not, keep clicking.
Yeah, no, we'll let people know. And you know what? We're not a real TV station. We don't have to take commercial breaks. But I tell you what, have you seen what happened to ad revenue at traditional media? Zero Hedge put out a story the other day just showing that traditional ad revenue in all media absolutely plummeted the last 6 months. What do you think's happening that the two guys with us with a combined age of about 150 here can live stream on what's happening in media, Jim?
It's called digital. It's called audio. You're not seeing the downturn in audio. You know that, Tommy. And with farm income going down. In fact, I'm working on an in-depth report about the print media in agriculture. Look at the number of pages in the major farm magazines. They used to be like a book, and now they're very thin. And with farmers, even though in many cases they get them free, they like digital. So it's a digital world right now, both from a digital quote print, electronic print, or audio podcast. And that's why I'm so glad I'm back doing a podcast, because farmers have told me the last year or so when I was not on a podcast. I'm on AgriTalk usually every Friday, but it's not like
great show
once a week where you have in depth where we can talk on issues. And I think I'll have a series of guests that join us over a period of time. So if any listener has any ideas, this is a joint project of let's have fun and let's have
Let's educate.
perspective. And
Let's
I've got a
educate.
number of people that I've already contacted. Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report is a good friend of mine. I'll get Bart Fisher of Texas A&M. I'll get maybe the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, who I totally respect, Stephen Vaden. Never know who we're going to have on the program.
No, we might pop producer Joe in there real quick. Jojo, stand up here. Look at. All right, how is all these buttons getting hit? Well, we got to thank my friend Dave, who's hitting the buttons, and we got to hit. We got to put producer Joe in there. Let's see, Jojo. This is my brother up there, Joe Grisafi. How you doing, Joe?
Good. How are you?
Good. You man the phones here at Nesvick?
Yes, I am.
We're doing an all right job clicking the buttons and stuff.
We're doing a great job here.
Well, I just click buttons and let Jim talk. He's like a wind-up toy. I put him over here, and he ended up at the side. He's like one of those auto things that cleans your pool. You just put it in there, and the pool's clean. You don't know what the hell.
And they're getting better and better with AI, by the way. I learned
Lord.
in college in communications class. In fact, her name was Ussery. Let us rejoice. I remembered her name. But she said, when you're given a speech, put a lounge or something in your mouth that when it dissolves, that's time to shut up. Well, one time she went up to speak long, and she put a button in her mouth. Rather so it depends. Specifics is very important. Let me just tell you. Be specific.
Listen. That's too much. I'm going to take a break for station identification and giggle here. I want you to click like and subscribe to Agbo Media on all platforms. Jojo, I'll see you in a little bit. Watch phones. Thanks, bro.
All right.
All right. That's Joe, my brother. All right. Here's how you get a hold of us, folks.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'd love for you to like and subscribe. And while you're at it, why don't you go to our social media platforms? We're on all of them at Agbo Media.
All right. Back to the show. Jim. We got a few more slides, and we're having some giggles. We got about 225 people watching. We're 48 minutes into the show. You and I thought we'd go a half hour. Wrong. Apparently, it's going to be an hour show. But some weeks have more news than others.
True.
I love doing traditional TV. I love when I go over to RFD. But there's something in traditional media called the hard out. And if you don't stop talking, they're going to the commercial with or without your permission, right? Well, we have no hard out, and we have plenty of people watching here. I'm going to post a picture, and you just talk about it, my friend.
Oh, this is the biggest thing from a market perspective, in my personal judgment, that will bring the less bearishness to the marketplace. Why do I say that? President Trump looks like he'll meet Xi Jinping, the leader of China, I would say by the end of this year. Now, in October, they may meet as an ASEAN conference. Now, if Trump meets with Xi Jinping, I think I would increase the odds that we could see a phase 2 of a U.S.-China trade agreement with much better follow-through on their purchase agreements if we have one. So that could be a game changer, especially for soybeans. Now, some people tell me, Tommy, China doesn't need the soybeans. They're not thinking. China can buy a lot more soybeans and then either give away their soybean production as food aid. So just don't think that China has to consume those their own soybeans. So I'm telling you, that's what I'm looking for as a potential levelizer in this bearish tone market that we have, because we need that Chinese market. I don't trust them, neither does Trump, but you want to trade with a country like China, India, etc. So that's going to be a very focal point in my judgment over the next few months.
Interesting. Speaking of Trump, let's bring him in. Trump in the Department of Treasury.
Well, that's the ATM machine that I talked about under the trade tariff revenues, and he knows how to use it. And so if we do need and get into more trade kerfuffles here, and it's negative, and we're seeing down in trade, because we've had for 3 straight years now, we've had a ag trade deficit, where for years we had an ag trade surplus. And so he's not going to be afraid to use those billions of dollars coming into the Treasury to serve as support. It's not as good as getting it from the marketplace. Farmers and ranchers know that. But until we can right the ship here, I think you'll get some income transfer payments if they're needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Here we go. This guy.
Okay, the RFK Jr. Let me just tell you, Maha, make America healthy again. On Tuesday, we thought we were going to get the second Maha Commission recommendations report. They were sent to the White House. Now they're saying they couldn't get all the cabinet people together. Don't believe that. There's some friction still involved on what some of those recommendations were going to be announced. Here's the bottom line. Yes, they're going to have a more sane policy regarding pesticides. The ag sector lobby finally got their act together and convinced Susie Wiley, chief of staff at the White House, and she got Trump's attention on this. They're not going to do away with an important tool for agriculture, pesticides, even though RFK Jr. wants to do it. He can't touch pesticides. It's not in his portfolio. Now, second, the biggest thing that's going to come out whenever they release this report is ultra processed foods, and it's big, Tommy. It's just not seed oils, but about 60% of all food products in the middle aisles of supermarkets are ultra processed foods. Now, I learned early on in college to follow the money. Hedge funds are putting millions of dollars into investing in companies to deal with this ultra processed foods. They smell money on this one. There will be lawsuits, etc. So the food industry, you'll have court battles, etc. So whenever we get the Maha report, we need to find out whether or not they define. First, you have to have a definition. What are ultra processed foods? Some people have it. RFK Jr. has a definition. I think it may not even come out in this most recent report, because they've had a call for public comment on the definition of ultra processed foods. How is it important to agriculture? Big time. Look at all the processed meats that we have in the meat counters. RFK Jr. will focus on school lunches, which I think personally are some of the best food that a kid can get nowadays. So many kids, that's the only meal that they get. What I'm trying to tell you is, there's your numero uno one for the future is ultra processed foods. They're coming after them.
Could you imagine, switching subjects a little bit, you probably giggle, smile, or laugh, but could you imagine his father being put in a time machine and seeing his son working with President Trump?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's just different. I'll tell you, farmers are very leery. And a hard one to answer is the close relationship that USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins has with RFK Jr. Sooner or later, that may get her in trouble. That's just my personal judgment, Tommy, that I think she's going to have to separate herself from some of his recommendations. And I think she can. And I think she can be quite articulate, but she should start doing so, because she's a spokeswoman for agriculture, a very effective spokeswoman. It's time to take that stance, in my personal judgment.
Gotcha. Speaking of relationships, I got one more for you. We'll do a few more, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A here with the first ever Wiesemeyer's Perspective here on the Ag Bowl Podcast. These two, are they in a relationship?
Oh, my goodness. Friday in Anchorage, Alaska, Trump is going to meet with Putin. Now, the word just a couple of hours ago that Trump wants to size him up. And this is what I said. Trump likes to get people in a room and he's very adept at sizing people up. And he wants to see which way Putin's going to go. He wants a ceasefire. And if he doesn't get a ceasefire, we know Trump's what he can do. He comes out and can slap more sanctions that'll hurt this time.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to see what Putin does. How's this affect agriculture? If Trump is seen as weak in this meeting, China is watching. Xi Jinping won't be in that meeting, but he'll be watching it. So if the U.S. appears weak, and I don't think he will, but if they appears weak, that gets into China-Taiwan relationship. And most China watchers tell me it's not a question of if, it's when China deals with their, quote, Taiwan issue. Well, if that's the case, look at all the computer chips we get.
Oh, yeah.
Highfalutin computer chips, et cetera, from Taiwan. You talk about a big ag impact. So that's what's all riding on this Friday assessment. We're going to have to see if we get a ceasefire. From Putin's perspective, he's got a war economy now.
Mhm.
And he's danced around sanctions and tariffs and things like that, selling a lot of oil to India and China. If he has a ceasefire, watch, the Russian economy is going to implode, I think. He knows that. So he's a little nervous there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
people who say Putin has all the cards or China has all the cards, no, that's balderdash. I'm not saying the U.S. has all of them, but there's some weakness on the part of Putin. He's lost a lot of people in that horrible war called
Horrible.
Europe. Yeah.
Mhm. How about this country? I don't know a lot about the
Brazil.
leadership of Brazil. Yeah, what do you know there, sir?
Oh my goodness! That it impacts cattle market, hamburger. We import a lot of hamburger from Brazil, but not not any longer, because the Trump slapped 50% tariffs on it. And the emails I get from cattle traders, et cetera, saying, is there going to be any exemption for hamburger, et cetera? But right now, Trump is very negative towards Canada. And he's very negative towards Brazil from a geopolitical perspective, because they have their former president in jail, and Trump doesn't like that. He was a good friend of Brazil's former president. So orange juice is a major traded item. They have an exemption.
Mhm.
So, but beef, hamburger doesn't. So Brazil, we had a trade surplus with Brazil. So this is a fundamental change in Trump's trade policy. He's just not going after countries that we have a trade deficit. This is more using trade policy as a geopolitical tool. That's a fundamental change, Tommy. And that's why it's so important. In the case of Canada and Mexico, we have the U.S.-Mexico agreement, USMCA.
Mhm.
85 to 90% of all the products come in, zero tariff. Thank goodness, as a result of USMCAs. But there's still a number of products that don't, maybe mainly in the automobile and products industry. Those are Canada, Mexico, and China that we have big question, and Brazil that we have big question marks for the future.
Unbelievable. So much stuff to talk about. We're wrapping up the slides. We're meeting with Jim Wiesemeyer. He's got his I don't even know how to explain how in depth his newsletter is, but I want you to sign up. If you haven't, you need to. Here's Jim's email, right?
Yes. I talked about ultra processed foods. Let me just end at least my stuff here. You got to bring humor to policy in Washington, otherwise you'd cry, is what I say in speeches. You got to have a little humor. And I was up in this true story, Stowe, Vermont. In fact, I'm wearing the shirt. That's where Ben & Jerry's is at. The ice creams, and I love. You can look at me. I love ice cream. And I went to a foo-foo bar up there in Stowe, Vermont, and I ordered a pork tenderloin. And a lady to the right of me, she said, "Why didn't you order the free-range chicken?" I turned to her. I said, "You know what a free-range chicken eats?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, it follows the other chickens and eats their excrement." And she
Mhm.
turned to the bartender and said, "I'll have a pork tenderloin."
Well, you showed her, huh? I love it. I
That's called
love it.
marketing. That's called marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on this show, we didn't have any breaking news, but we're ready. I have all my screens up and everything. If we
Let
had
me
breaking news,
see.
we would
No,
hit
I
this.
don't see it. I don't see
So any breaking news, false alert, false alarm. No breaking news here today, but we did have a big move in the cattle markets from the highs to lows. We're having a big move in the stock market. Yesterday, we had the USDA. Do you see anyone in this picture in the pits that you remember, Jim?
Again, no, I don't. Thank goodness I don't. But that's how I used. Remember the Board of Trade in the old days,
Oh, yeah.
Tommy?
Yeah.
The calls.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
those were
I
the
left the
fun days.
floor. I left the floor to trade electronically, and I'm very glad and grateful I did, and met a lot
Yes.
of people. But towards the end of the pits, I was coming back because I was trading grain so active in the Board of Trade building. And then I would run down the hall, down the elevator for something called the modified. You remember the modified close
Yes.
with the curb?
Yes. Yeah.
And then on the last day that corn ever traded in the Chicago Board of Trade corn pit, I made one of the last trades ever on the floor as a floor trader in the modified, and it was just, I, it wasn't like they. It was a very odd day to
Yeah, I bet.
watch.
But
Oh,
before that, you could feel the tone of a market, couldn't you, on the
yeah,
floor?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you could see like if the Cargill broker ran in and said sell it at 6, sell it at 5, you'd sell it at 4, and you'd bid them 3. Now I think if you do that on the screen, it's illegal. But
Yeah.
Ligano, no Ligano, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's hard to tell, not hard. It's impossible, pretty much, to tell who you're trading with on the screen. So when you have a move like this, feeder cattle up 400 and something, lives up 3, and then all of a sudden we instantly, right as you and I were about ready to go live, we were trading negative on the day. And then we're scrounging for news and stuff. In some ways, there was a lot of advantages to the pits, but there was some disadvantage. The great professional traders who adapted to information quicker would get information and pick off those guys in the pit, because when Bloomberg and products like that were new, but now we've moved to a whole nother world. I know we went down a side hole, but they have algorithms hooked up to every news
They
service in the
do.
world. So these
Absolutely.
algorithms read the news, even if it's fake news, and they trade off it, and it moves the market. So the second President Trump or anybody says anything, I'm trying to think of one event I could think of that was real news, not fake news, was the Boston bombing. The stock market broke very hard quickly when those bombs went off during the Boston Marathon. Other events I could think that were fake when AI was new 3-4 years ago, someone digitally enhanced a image of something bad happening in Washington. It was fake and it got picked up by major news networks and then taken down. So that moves the stock market, the bond market, and everything else. And you have these jerk effects. And there's not as much accountability. If I ran down in the floor and yelled fire and there wasn't a fire, I don't think I'd be welcome to the floor anymore. Now you've got some bot yelling fire,
Yep.
and how do you sue or press
Yep.
charges or against a bot? So
Well, I remember in 1980 the Carter grain embargo announcement. That it was on a Friday. I'll never forget it. Where
we got time.
it
Do
made
tell.
millions of people. Not millions. It made some people who were short the market a lot of money, because markets cratered after that Friday announcement. And an inside track, I was a beat reporter during those days, and I had a USDA contact. He's no longer with us, God rest his soul. And he had me come in. He whistled me into his office and he said, "Watch CBS News tonight." I go, "Oh." Leslie Stahl. They broke the news. The Carter people broke the news to Leslie Stahl of the Carter grain embargo that Friday. And we had months of volatility in the marketplace, not only from a farmer and trader perspective, but an agribusiness perspective there. And it taught me again, grain embargoes never work. Never work. They were just, Carter was sold a bill of goods from his CIA, and he didn't listen to Vice President Mondale from Minnesota, who knew agriculture. He chose to listen to the CIA, and it was a mistake.
Speaking of presidents, go over the list of presidents you've interviewed real quick. Brag yourself up a little bit.
Oh, and I'm almost all of them since Carter and Reagan. Reagan was the one of the better ones in my reporting circle. The reason I say that, he treated his people very good. What you see is what you got with Reagan. He picked his slots very carefully. He wasn't lazy. Some people said he was lazy. No, that's why he had a cabinet, he told me. That's why when I asked him questions too detailed, he goes, no, I'm not going to answer that. That's my cabinet person. Carter would answer them in detail, by the way. The other president I really liked, and this will surprise people maybe, but was Bill Clinton. He was the most intelligent president I think I've ever, although Trump gave him a run, but Clinton is very intelligent. He just had foibles, okay, that he could have gone more. But my 401k was never better than under the Clinton administration. He was a moderate Democrat, and he was willing to compromise, a word we don't know in this town anymore. And Clayton Yiter used to be USDA secretary, no longer with us, used to be U.S. trade rep, leader of the Mercantile Exchange. Clayton was a smart guy, a broad-shouldered farmer from Dickens, Nebraska. I asked him once before he passed away, Clayton, will we ever get back to civility in Washington, D.C.? And his answer to me, which is still the best answer, whenever we have a political party that is a true minority party that can't come back into office the next election, that means they got to get along to get anything done, to get anything they want. Right now, we're about a 52 to 48% country politically, and I don't see it changing the next election, and that's why we have uncivility in this town, power. So the time will come when one political party will really screw up, Tommy. And that's where you'll see the spread widen, where we'll get more civility back in this town, believe it or not.
Well said. Well said, my friend. I think we'll end it on that note because I can't do any better than that. Mr. Jim Wiesemeyer, if you want to sign up for the Wiesemeyer newsletter, this is how you do it, Jim Wiesemeyer. So much fun to work with you, and I continue to learn. I know the show is good for people of all ages. I think older folks would love the history and perspective. That's why we call it this Wiesemeyer's. What do we call the show, Jim?
Wiesemeyer's Perspectives.
There we go, because you have them. With that, I think we'll do it. You're on the road next week. I'm on the road. I could tape next Thursday. We'll make a link. It may not be live. We may just tape and then launch it live, but I'll send you a link. You could send that to your viewers and listeners. With that, I thank everyone. Tommy Grisafi coming to you live from Nesvick Studios down here in Nashville, Tennessee. Mr. Jim Wiesemeyer, the one and only, coming to you from Washington, D.C. With that, I am grateful for this opportunity. We ask you to click like and subscribe to all the Ag Bull Media channels. And of course, if you need help in any way, ask someone for help. Jim, these are tough times in agriculture, and I think people mentally are struggling. I mean that sincerely.
Absolutely. They are.
We'll see y'all next week.